It's fantastic. It was quite an amazing experience. Did the dip. I didn't initially plan, but I was there. I had the opportunity, and I thought this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, so I did it. It tells me that this is really a form of what we call living heritage. And people are really making the effort for this. That is, in a way, more special. If young people are interested in a form of living heritage, you know it'll continue. The challenge is being able to absorb and maintain the growing interest and the growing numbers, and that does put pressure on, obviously, on governance and on all the administration side that has to manage all of this, but I think it's been done and it's quite incredible. It's a huge job. Congratulations also to the government of Uttar Pradesh for pulling this off. It's no small feat.
Welcome to the beautiful UNESCO office in New Delhi. And today I have the privilege of being in conversation with Mr. Tim Curtis, who is the Director, UNESCO, as well as the representative of UNESCO to India, and of course the Director of the Regional South Asian Office. I'm delighted that he's decided to join us today because he is returning from a very special place. Welcome back from the Mahakumbh. How was your experience?
How to describe it is fantastic. It was quite an amazing experience there yesterday. It's something you don't get to see anywhere, really. So I can only say I've had a fantastic, wonderful experience, a real eye-opener.
Once in a lifetime in many ways, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. And so I really didn't want to miss the opportunity. And I must say, it's a memory that will stick with me.
Have you ever seen these many people ever?
I've been to a few large gatherings, but this was on a scale that I'm not sure I've seen anywhere.
Or will be repeated very soon, I don't think.
No, I don't think so. Yeah. It was truly impressive. Yeah.
And I mean, I think it's just so unique in itself, and the fact that it has this historicity.
Absolutely. I think, we'll talk about it. I think what's amazing to me is that this festival is so ancient and yet so modern. And it's continuing today at a scale that keeps growing, and yet it's something that's been around for so long and with this kind of deep significance. So I really find it fascinating in that sense, yeah.
And what drew you to the Mahakumbh?
Well, first of all, Mahakumbh is, the Kumbh Mela is recognized as intangible cultural heritage of UNESCO. And in fact, prior to me coming to be the UNESCO Director of South Asia, I was in charge of the Intangible Cultural Heritage Program and Secretary of the convention. So I was actually involved in the, I was running the committee that inscribed it in 2017. We were in Jeju Island in the Republic of Korea. So that was my previous job for 8 years, was the Intangible Heritage Program of UNESCO. And I must say, I remember the Kumbh Mela. Inscription process and sort of learning about it at the time and thinking, oh my goodness, this is huge. One day I'd love to go. So now I'm here as a rep to
very
India,
unique time.
and I was invited, and it was an opportunity, and I couldn't miss it. So this.
And can you tell me a little bit about this intangible cultural heritage, ICH?
Yeah, sure. So Kumbh Mela was recognized as intangible cultural heritage of humanity by UNESCO. But in the idea of intangible cultural heritage, we also call it living heritage, which is a term I prefer. The technical term is intangible cultural heritage. But essentially, everybody knows about the World Heritage in UNESCO, which is a huge program. But behind World Heritage is an international treaty, a convention that was adopted by countries in 1972. And countries that signed the convention have their sites recognized, but also take a commitment. The idea behind it is that there's certain forms of heritage that are of value to the whole of humanity, and that countries commit to protecting these sites that are on the World Heritage List. But what happened over the years is many countries, particularly of the so-called South, started saying, well, our heritage isn't just in buildings.
Right.
Our heritage is primarily in the practices, the dances, the language, the traditions we enact. Mm-hmm. And this was a concept that had also been pushed early on in the 1950s in Japan, actually. After the war, they said a lot of our cultural heritage is not just the buildings, it's the practices. So it was gaining traction, and then that led to a new convention in 2003, adopted by the General Conference, which recognized what we call the Intangible Cultural Heritage Convention, or we call it Living Heritage. So it's really a complementary to the World Heritage Convention, but it's also, instead of focusing on the sites and the buildings, it's focusing on practices, expressions. It has different domains.
Cuisine?
Yes, there are foodways. What we call culinary heritage is part of it, absolutely. And there's a number of elements inscribed along that. But the core criterion is that it must be linked to the identity of a community of practitioners, okay? So that it's really, in that sense, fostering cultural diversity and helping to safeguard traditions that may be at risk of disappearing, and that instead of comparing one to another, it's a comparison within a community. So a community identifies its own intangible cultural heritage, and then countries put that forward.
And the Mahakumbh would qualify on all these counts? And
absolutely. So Mahakumbh was inscribed. Without going into too much details, there's certain criteria that must be filled, such as wise ICH, but also the role. UNESCO plays a lot of importance on the identification and the role of the community in the preparation of the nomination file. And so the Mahakumbh nomination file involved a huge amount of stakeholders, organized also and then submitted by the government of India, of course, to UNESCO. But so, it was everything from some of the religious organizations, district administrations, the sadhus themselves, who all wrote letters to support this nomination. And then it was inscribed as, I think it was...
So how long was the process?
Well, the process, the work, first of all, there's the work in country, which is all this consultation. So I don't know, you'd have to ask sort of the officials here how long they took. But once it comes to UNESCO, it's about a year and a half. It goes through an expert evaluation. So there's an evaluation body of 12 experts from all regions of the world who evaluate the file. They give a recommendation. And then it goes to an intergovernmental committee of 24 countries on a rotating basis. And those countries then...
So it's a very robust process.
It's a very robust process that starts in country and then takes another year and a half once it gets submitted to UNESCO. And it's an intergovernmental, first expert and then intergovernmental process,
And could you give me examples of others?
We have about 780, I think, or 730 now elements inscribed. And in fact, every year there's a new committee and there's a number of new elements that are inscribed. India has 15 elements inscribed. And I can give you some news is that the next session of the committee will be held in India in December for the first time. Last year, the World Heritage Committee was held in India. And this year, India will host the Intangible Heritage in New Delhi. And that will be in early December of this year. And I think there's a nomination coming through for India, but I'm not supposed to talk too much about that. But
I'm maybe guessing now what...
but there are many examples. They range from food traditions to very small-scale disappearing traditions of indigenous to large-scale things like the Kumbh Mela.
Right.
And in all corners of the world. So it's really quite diverse. And that's why it's not a comparative about this one versus that one. It's within the culture, within the community, what is identified by that community as essential to their culture is really the kind of criteria that's looking for. And when we talk about safeguarding, the difference, say, with buildings, you bring in experts and you protect a building and you have laws and you say you can do this and you can't do that. Here we're talking about knowledge, practices, so it's really about this intergenerational transmission. And the key to safeguarding is making sure that it continues to the next generation. So we also work with education, we work with awareness raising. And generally I've found over the years, the key is getting young people interested. If young people are interested in a form of living heritage, it'll continue. The biggest threat is when the young people get disconnected from it. And so
you've lived in a couple of countries. How do you think our youth in India, how do they respond to their heritage?
I'm very impressed.
You are? Oh, that's good to hear.
I think since I've been here, I think what's amazing about India in that sense is the heritage, is that ability to both embrace the modern world and maintain a heritage which goes back thousands of years. And to me, this is a truly unique, or not unique, but it's a very striking feature of India. And I think young people are attached. And it comes through also even in having your own movie industry, music industry, contemporary, ancient. It kind of merges nicely together. And what we say with living heritage is it shouldn't be static. It shouldn't be frozen in time, just replicating something of the past. It needs to adapt to each generation. You keep the essence, but of course you adapt so that it has meaning. And I would say overall very positive in India. I think young people in India are attached to their cultural heritage in general, perhaps not everyone, and in a creative way, in a dynamic way, not in a static way. And at the same time, there's the population of youth in India is huge. It's a very young population, and I'm constantly impressed and quite amazed. Yeah.
And how is the Mahakumbh perceived abroad in different parts of the world?
With a certain level of astonishment and amazement. I think that the scale of it, of course, impresses everyone. And when people know of it, it is impressive. It is huge. And we're seeing, I think, more and more this year, you're seeing more and more international people coming for the Mahakumbh, or the Kumbh Mela, whichever it's called, and that'll continue. There's also the diaspora community, of course, it comes back, but many, many people. And so I was there yesterday, and in fact, I was there with a combination of indigenous leaders from around the world who'd come, shamans, indigenous tribal leaders, with also Indians who came to do the dip and who'd heard about it and who were there. So, it's really taking that. And then, of course, there's high-level visits. Tourists are coming. But I think it should never be just for tourists, right? The main thing is, and the bulk of the people are Indians who want to do it, and that's essential, because that gives it its real spirit. Yeah.
I think the spiritual quotient is very high.
Absolutely.
Even though there's so many people there, I can feel like organized chaos, isn't it?
I think that's a decent way of putting it. I think what was amazing to me yesterday when I was there is that all these people walking.
Yes.
All walking, carrying water. But everybody was kind of calm.
Right. And they know where they're going. They're all working.
Going, and everybody seemed okay, despite the massive crowds.
Yeah.
So that in itself is truly astonishing. And
I was speaking to someone and they said, we have entire countries, the populations of entire countries visiting in one day.
Yes.
Like all of Singapore is at the Mahakumbh in one day.
Absolutely.
It's that big.
So it is, and the fact that it's every 12 years, well, there's the 4 sites and it goes around it, but it gives it that special sense, and but it does brings together so many people, and this is another important aspect of what we call living heritage, is that kind of social cohesion, bringing. The reason we have living heritage is it helps form our societies. It helps keep us together. Community. It builds community. It's the foundation of community. And we saw during COVID, for example, in UNESCO, many people were distressed because they couldn't practice. Whether it was Christmas, whether it was other ceremonies, festivals, this will cause a lot of distress during the lockdown. It's that connection between people and the connectedness between people. And I think what I saw at the Kumbh yesterday was, there's a huge connectivity going on there on a scale that is incredible. Yeah.
And a lot of people who haven't gone have major FOMO. So I meet so many people.
Well, I think we're in the age of social media, which tends to sort of amplify and exaggerate that. I don't know if that's good or bad. We're still figuring it out. It does create issues around crowd management and the number of people. But it's a good problem to have. Yeah.
And for you personally, what was it like? I mean, what did you find fascinating about this particular experience?
I found this sea of humans fascinating, and all going there. And in the end, I did the dip. I didn't initially plan, but I was there. I had the opportunity, and I thought this is a once in a lifetime opportunity, so I did it. And just that sense of being there among the huge crowds, but everybody there kind of for a common purpose, everybody in quite a good mood, actually. Normally when you're in big crowds like that, people are not so happy, but here everybody was kind of okay, and it was good. And also just the physical setting, the 3 rivers, and just that sort of sense of this is a massive.
And it's timeless.
Timeless. And that connection, as I said, both, you had the modern side of it and the connection to this ancient cultural tradition. I think that's what really gives it its special magic.
Just the thought that it took place 100 years ago and it will take place again 100 years from now.
More than 100 as well. The 100 is short.
In a civilization like India, 100 is nothing. Yes.
Yeah, and so that's good. That's positive, and that's what we mean by living tradition, living heritage. Living traditions is things that keep adapting to each generation. That each generation feels it alive. And so...
You were speaking about the modern elements. Some of them have been on the practical front, like cleaning the river,
That's what I'm saying.
24/7 cleaning, the facilities that are available. What did you make of that?
Well, I was only there for a little while. It's not easy for me to assess what works, what doesn't work. But I saw drones. I saw a huge network, the bins, I think, yes. So what I can tell you that there's obviously a massive effort undertaken to be able to absorb. I understand the population is normally around 2.5 million, and then we're talking 500 million coming in a few weeks. So that requires a logistics and a management that is intense and was very impressive. I think this is the challenge. And in fact, when in the file, the challenge from a living heritage point of view is not that this tradition is dying out. The challenge is being able to absorb and maintain the growing interest and the growing numbers, and that does put pressure on, obviously, on governance and on all the administration side that has to manage all of this. But I think it's being done, and it's quite incredible. And I just saw that. I think there's this nice balance between setting up the infrastructure, but even people's own sort of discipline. As I said, you could see people walking, but sort of patiently and coming in and accepting and all of that. And that was
very
really quite
undemanding
and all the tents. And so I found that very impressive. Yeah.
It was special. And the other thing that the Uttar Pradesh government has done has also been the digital Kumbh.
Yes.
So what did you make of that?
Well, that's what I like that. I like that idea of again, that's what I'm saying. You're mixing the ancient with the modern. And I think, why not? The idea of the Kumbh is to reach out to as many people as possible. Digital technology offers that possibility, and it's being utilized. And I think that's...
And do you think this appeals to like a global...
Yeah, I think it does. I think anybody who sees this is going to be impressed. But I think let's not lose track of the core...
Yes.
The core reason for it, which is, it is a Hindu festival, and it is about accessing the water, and it is about these things, and that has to stay at the center. It's okay to do these other things if that stays. Meaning, what has to stay at the center is this genuine desire of people to. I mean, there's the FOMO side, as you said, but there's something else also, which is people. These are not necessarily very wealthy people who are traveling large distances and want to be there and want to do this. And that's in itself
very moving.
That's very moving, and it tells me that this is really a form of what we call living heritage. It's people, they're not being pushed or urged.
And just walking for miles.
And people are really making the effort for this. And that is quite unique, and that is in a way, I'm sorry to say, more special than any digital technology you can put together, Yeah.
And I think the other thing, the way they have their own order in that.
Yes.
How they hold hands, or they'll take a chunni and everyone in the group will be holding that.
That's what yes, exactly. And that's what I was noticing. And I was sitting in the car, and that's the kind of spontaneous bottom-up organization that's going on that makes it all possible, really. And that has to be, let's say, supported by the government and all that. But at the essence, that's what's making it work. And that's the real living heritage. That's incredible. Yeah.
And it's the kind of detailing that I don't think is possible for anybody, and especially at this scale.
No. There's no way you can sort of tell all these people to act like this and do that. Well, that wouldn't work. So it's coming from inside, right? It's coming from within them, and they want to be there, and they're doing that. And I think that's the beauty of it. And that's the special thing that must be kept and maintained, and that's what keeps it alive as a real living tradition, as a real cultural heritage.
But then there are the other real-world concerns as well, as 7-layer security, 24. It's just...
And just waste management. Right. So you do need, and the government has, it was impressive, there's bins everywhere. You need to do waste management. You need to be careful of the pollution. You can't have that many people and not have these other considerations, and that requires
not have some sort of epidemic breakout.
Yeah, you have to be very careful, and that does require. So I'm not saying it can all be just done organically, but the heart of it is organic, and then you need these structures to make sure, because every year, not every year, but every Kumbh seems to be more and more people.
this one was 144 years, so it had all those.
Yeah, but still, it seems to be growing each time as the population of the country is growing, and also I think as the ability of people to travel is become more and more people are able to travel and they want to travel.
And they're coming there.
And they come in train, roads, people walking long distances carrying, buckets of water and all, but it was all calm in that sense. And that's what I was quite impressed.
I think it just represents a very gentle side of the belief system and the people.
Yeah, the people, absolutely. And it's coming together for the right reasons,
Do you think, has this been a conversation point globally as well, the Kumbh?
Yeah, I think people are even globally much more aware of it, and there's been all sorts of, it's been all around the press. I might say that that's part of the recognition of it at UNESCO as living heritage, is giving it that recognition, bringing the awareness. But I think many people now know about it, and it's a big thing, yeah.
And what does this mean for foreign tourists? In bringing in more.
There's definitely an attraction for foreign tourists. I think not every tourist is going to go to the Kumbh. I think tourism is and I don't think the Kumbh should just be about the tourists. I mean,
no,
if tourists come, and
I agree.
It doesn't need to be. You have enough Indians wanting to go that you don't actually need all of that. Tourism in itself is good, and it can be, and there's all sorts of different kinds of tourism, and I think India's on the path. India has so much to offer for that. But I would still say that the tourism side of the Kumbh is not the major side of the Kumbh, and I think that's not a bad thing, even though it's good to have these tourists and this exposure and these foreigners coming in, people learning and people exchanging. I think what's really amazing is, people are coming together, different kinds of people, and that's really important.
But I think part of it is also, if it's been well organized, then it sends a message to the world that, look, we can handle this, so you can come on your private tours and have a good experience.
There is some more and more of that, and there will be more in the future.
Yes, because Yogi Adityanath, of course, the chief minister, is himself a Mahant.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's important to have. Yeah, and I think there's been a lot of exposure, and I saw foreigners there quite a lot. And I'm not downplaying it. I'm just saying, just looking at the event, it is a massive event anyway. Yeah. And I have no doubt over the years there's going to be more and more.
So I think, from the top you have that blend of spirituality with the practical hard knocks of arranging these things. And what I liked this time around was that the sadhus got their space as well, which is very important.
And I saw especially the Naga sadhus had their place and they could come and go. And so hats off. It is a huge logistics undertaking, and I saw it yesterday. And that's the big challenge. The big challenge is the success of the event and keeping that going. And I think I understand that it's a lot of preparation. I understand that they had to bring in people from all over the state. Of course, as I say, you have a city or town of 2.5 million people that hosts 500 million people in a month. That is a massive undertaking, and so it's that combination that's hugely important. Yeah.
Credit to the local population also who adapted to this. I mean, 1 month is.
I can only imagine. I've lived in a city that's adapted to the Olympic Games coming, and that kind
Sydney?
of yes. And but this is even on a scale much larger, and I think it was yeah.
And you've already shared this, but what was the most inspirational story of the Mahakumbh? And I think you've already shared that, but you shared it so beautifully, so maybe.
What, what, for me? Yeah, the people, and just seeing all of the sea of people just sort of almost like a dance moving through in this way. And then, I got to do the dip. I think I didn't expect to do that. That was quite something. And just realizing the scale of it. And the as you said, so many people, I said, of all different, you also saw all classes, all different social status, everybody, from the wealthiest to the poorest to everybody there. That is something quite unique, and that's something not easy always to do, is to bring together everybody. And I felt that's what was happening there. Yeah,
It's incredible.
yeah.
But thank you so much for sharing your impressions
Pleasure to be
of
here.
the Mahakumbh.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad that you got this opportunity once in 144 years for
So
this
am I.
particular
So
one.
am I. I'm very glad as well.
And it's something I'm sure you'll remember for a very, very long time.
I will do, and I think there's a great future for the Kumbh,
There is.
and it will continue going. And I think, coming back to the question you asked me, I think there's so many young people there that clearly this is something that has a future and that will continue to have a future, and it's so important. I think, internationally, but also for the country. And I think it's been fantastic, and I'll congratulate also all the authorities, because I saw them all working, all the police and the administrators, and it's a huge job, and they really did it. They need a bit of a rest after this.
I hope they get it.
Congratulations also to the government of Uttar Pradesh for pulling this off. It's no small feat. Yeah.
And what I'm very happy about, in a sense, is that I see that you've been moved by that experience, which is incredible, because as you know, there's so many people there. Sometimes you may not get that experience, but the fact that you have means we've done a good job, or the authorities have.
Everybody's done a good job. I think it's difficult to go there and not be moved by the experience, to be honest. But no, it's a fantastic thing. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Curtis, for sparing your time today and sharing what has been a personally very rewarding experience for you. And I want to thank our viewers for watching, and we shall be back soon with another guest and another interesting conversation. Thank you for watching.